This time I preemptively thought to wash, or not wash, but wipe my glasses, but then the thing started streaming before I was able to finish cleaning them. Okay, so today my plan is, came into it with a little bit more of a plan, is to revisit the grid structure and what that looks like. I left my ruler in the other room, but the plan is to create a grid. And I can probably get away with using one that I already have if I can figure out where I put it. Let's put it in here. No. Here it is. Okay, I do have the grid, so I don't need that. Alright, have a grid. That's the 1x1 setup. And what I want to be able to do is create a design. I am blown out. Let's see if I can't adjust that. Brightness down a little bit. That helps a bit. It'll still be doing whatever. Anyway, take this grid and make a base square pattern of sorts, and then have elements that turn it into something of a tessellation. Just a general form that takes on elements of a tessellation, and have that as my base grid pattern. Hello, Marine. And then have that intersect, or have, basically what I want to do is have a tessellation. So I'm just going to do a sketch of this sort of deal. Like, let's say I have, let's make it 3x3, that's the easiest to show how it might intersect. Have this, what would be, the base is like a 3x3 grid. Let's show it better with this. A 3x3 grid. And use this square to then make a pattern that can intersect with itself as a base outline. So if I were to take this square and instead pull this in here and have that one go here, now if I get rid of these two, I can rotate this at a 90-degree rotation and it will intersect with itself. So I could have another square over here that is the same. Wait, no, it's got to go this way. My bad. Okay. That if you rotate it, it's the same outline as this shape. And I can use that as a structural format, but then I can come in and have different characterizations happening. That I have this same base shape and then I change it so I can create a repeating pattern that varies but intersects with itself. So I can fill out a large space that is easy to repeat and create something, but it doesn't visually have as much repetition as if I were to have a design that was solely within a more rigid square. Because even if you have a repeating pattern and you have this guy right here and he's next to a tall dude or a super wide guy, if you see that pattern repeated again over here, you start to notice those similarities in that repetition, and it's not as interesting. But you can also try rotating it slightly. It's still interesting, but you start to see when you have a pattern and you scale back, you start to see those repeating textures. I'm trying this out as a means of having this structure that's slightly varied, and then having like 3 or 4, well, it would end up being 4 different ones, 4 different instances. So I can still have these intersecting larger shapes, but the interior could be different. And so you don't have the same sense of repetition. There will be some sense of repetition, just because of the nature of repeating a pattern in any way, shape, or form. But I could also change the order of these 4 and then have like 3 or 4 and ultimately be on a print all over sort of pullover or shirt or something like that. I want to test that and see how it might look. So that's what the plan is for today, is to create a repeating pattern that's, I don't know, maybe 6x6, and then that can upscale or downscale, and it has a few options. Divides by 2, 3, 6, 1. Should I do 4? 4 is more limiting. I want it to have a little bit more, so I'll do a 6x6 base shape, create some sort of tessellation from that base shape, and then that tessellation that shape will have 4 different versions of patterns within it. You could, circles don't intersect with themselves well, but you could do something, someone asked about that, could do something along the lines of, if you have a shape that you already know how it intersects with something else. So let's say you have this rectangle that's 2 by 3 inches. You could have something come into it that's whatever this shape is, and now you would then take that form and place it over on this edge, which you can tear it or cut it or whatever, and then you have that pattern, that sort of shape over here, and now that would successfully intersect with itself there. You can also then cut something up here, or that would be better to do from the other side for explaining this. Have like this, that zigzag form, so then it would be there, and now you have this shape that intersects with itself if you were to repeat it in this direction and that direction. I haven't done a lot of work with tessellations outside of just doing basic square or rectangular base shapes or patterns. But if you are using a triangle that intersects, that's equilateral, conceivably you should be able to like take this angle, put it over there, but I'm not 100% sure. You should look into tessellations and see. This is something I learned like in 6th grade, so I would have been like 12 or something. I don't know how old you are in 6th grade, I forget, but we just took a shape, physically cut this element out, and taped it to the other side. If you are working with a square, you could also rotate it. So if you take something from this edge, instead of moving it to the parallel side, you can rotate it 90 degrees and take it here, and then the shape would from there, rotate this way, and you'd eventually have it back to an interlocking position there. But I think you can only do that on one. I'm not 100% sure. This is just me trying to work through some stuff. Anyway, I'm going to do a 6x6 square. Create a shape. That functions as a tessellation. And then repeat that tessellation a few times. Let me get some tape. Take this other edge down. I'm going to try this. Ripping off neck. Okay, so I'm going to just with a pencil sketch out what I might have. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a square. And then I'm using what's it called? Yellow Duck to broadcast. That's the actual thing that's sending out the signal that I have, the feed that I have, and the feed is being produced by OBS. Open Broadcast Studio, I believe is what it's called, which is used for stuff like Twitch and stuff, but because Instagram is native, they don't have something within the program itself to broadcast. They have the capability, but to have a stream feed that's pushing to Instagram. So OBS and Yellow Duck are the two things you need. You can use other streaming services. Those are the two that I'm using. They're both free. So I am going to take this outline and rotate this form. I might have some slight mixed success with this, I'm not sure. And rotate it. (90 degrees this direction, which means it'll be this juts out 2. I might be a little bit tight on space on this. Okay. And this one go up as well. Nope, I'm gonna leave it. This might be best to just outline underneath it. I think that might be my best option. Okay, so I'm just going to dedicate this grid that I have to being this form. But let's shift this up here. So it's, I'm going to outline this with my pen. So that I know what my shape is. That goes 2 down. 2 over. I have to have a bit of mental discipline with this. 1 down. Down. One down. Two over. One down. And that's my 6-inch mark. So now I would rotate that form on that pivot point, which means 2 over, 1 up. There. Pen's acting up a bit. I don't know if I need to refill it or what. Let me check. It's pretty good. I think I've been a little bit odd with using it. Okay. Ah, that's one thing we don't have going. And I'm doing this on a rotation, so I'm just taking these 2 interior bits. There's no real way to 100%, if you're working with a pattern, make it look like you don't have a pattern going. But you can play with the repeating elements a bit so that you have a little bit of wiggle room with things. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish with this. And just explore some different methodology. And from here I'm going to create blockhead figures, just the face, or not figures, the faces that fit within this pattern. And then can interlock. So with this pattern I have here, and I guess I can sketch it out on this one with the Sharpie, and you can see a bit better what would happen with it. This isn't precise as I'd want it to be, but Unless I mess something up, this should work. Hello, Alice. So if you take this and you rotate it, then it fits in against there. And if you were to rotate it again, it would fit against that shape. And if you rotate it on that same corner, then it fits back again. And so if I make a pattern within this form, it doesn't create the same rigid lines. I can cross over sections and have it still repeat and follow a pattern well, but it won't be as clear as if you just had like this face and you have this clear delineating line that separates every instance of that face. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's something that I see when I see repeating patterns. Hello, Karen in the Philippines. I remember you because you said that you were staying up till 5 a.m. And that getting a lechon was a special occasion. Which it is. I haven't seen any instance of getting a lechon that wasn't like a more more important event, because it's a lot of food and a lot of time committed to getting that roast pig going. I don't know how to do this. I think I'm going to take these guys off. Just fold them over, that's easier. And then tape this a little bit down. Trying out this other method for tearing off tape that I've seen for if you are using a bunch of tape. Instead of ripping it, you fold it underneath, and it gives you something of a reinforced tearing spot, and it leaves a little tab for the next time. I'm doing a blockhead pattern. I want to make a larger semi-repeating pattern. And so first I'm making a baseline, a base shape that will be a repeating form, but it's not a perfect square, so that when I come back and shift things or rotate them, let me double check. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just gonna be paranoid that I mess something up until I'm like 5 steps into this. Make sure. It goes there. Should be working. Hello. I'm remembering your name is Becca and not Pibbo. Okay, so next step is to make a blockhead pattern that goes in this design. I want to do this. I might end up shifting how this ultimately functions. Hello, hippo. I'm going to mark this up slightly so that I have a positioning that I can come back and reference. Okay. It's kind of like a puzzle. I'm doing all right, Hippo. How are you doing? But it's a puzzle that I'm creating now. It'll eventually be a pattern. I like it better than markers. But part of that is that I like brush tips, and I can switch out what the brush tip is without having to get a new marker, and I can refill. There's just a little bit more leeway with elements of using a brush and ink. You can switch out the material or the marking tool much faster, and you can do stuff like dry brush without ruining the item itself. Where if you were to try and like dry out a marker to get the look of a dry marker, you have to sort of sacrifice the marker itself. I also just like simplifying tools because then you tend to have more specific controls. It's what I like, but it's not necessarily better. It's just what I prefer. Sumi ink, S-U-M-I. That's not going to focus. Sumi ink, and the brand is Yasutomo. I don't really know too much about different brands of Sumi ink. This is just the one that is like most consistently available in my experience. It dries pretty easily. It depends on how thick you apply the ink and what your surface is. If it's this paper is a little bit more absorbent of ink, has a little bit more of a fiber feeling to it, so the ink soaks into it pretty easily. But other tracing paper I have doesn't absorb it as much. Depends how you're applying it, how humid it is. If you are in the Philippines, it probably can get humid at times. During the summer here, I have the air conditioning going, not as much, because sometimes it's a comfort thing, but for working on ink stuff, if if I don't have the AC going, it can take much longer for the ink to dry. You have to sort of learn how much to apply and how to read the feeling of the brush in order to know if you need more ink or less ink, and depends on how you want it to behave. If it's this sort of thing, I usually call it a blockhead because it's pretty blocky and it's a head. And it also makes me think of Charlie Brown, which I like. Once I get this sort of pattern guy drawn out, I'll try and show you how this tessellation sort of thing would function. I don't have anybody. Yeah. I'll do this way. Part of what I'm trying to do as I'm working on this is I'm trying to avoid super long unbroken lines, because those will be visually a hint of where the patterns begin and end. So right now I have a pretty long line going here. I'm gonna break that up by having a squiggle guy come in right here. Thanks, the girl. Let's have it be a need to do some more that are turned in a direction. Trying to avoid as best as I can too thin of points where what will eventually be solids. If I can get those intersections to be thicker lines, then I'm less likely to have issues when I fill it in digitally. Extend a little bit further down. Okay, so now if I am to take this pattern, I'd be able to rotate it and have it intersect with the same pattern. But because this pattern, the design doesn't have a clear orientation to it, being up or down or left or right, which way the elements are facing, you can fill out a larger space and have it appear to be more varied. Without that as much a sense of repetition as if it were to be on a grid. You can follow patterns more easily when they're on a grid. So let's kind of illustrate that for you, if I can. Let's put some unnecessary stress that I don't like. Okay. So let's scan this. You can hear that scanner. Let's be 1200. Let's make it 600. And I need to go to a folder. No, desktop. Screenshots, 5 designs, 1003, 10-03, -2020, block tessellation. Oh, nice. Block tessellation. Today is the 3rd. Okay, let's scan that. While that's happening, let's minimize some stuff. Oh, quit Chrome. That'll help with all of my everything running better. Let's see this. Diff. Close out some stuff. Open up. Okay, and now I need to set up my display capture. Okay, you're gonna get a second there. Window, Photoshop, scale this down, and I can show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. Okay. So let me fill this in first. So I'm going to take the curves and make these blacks very black and get rid of the white bit. Fill this in and all the sections I want to be black. And I'm going to use those registration points that I drew out initially to realign these on a grid. But after that I'll erase them. Forget those lips. Okay. So I'm going to copy this. I'm just going to get a space that's decent sized, 5 square. Make this a bit smaller. Let's get this on best lined up on a grid as I can, because that'll make everything a bit easier in the long run. Let's see if this is stuff. Seems to be pretty good. Okay. Now, this is a little bit too far this way. Should have enough room now. Okay. So now I'm going to duplicate this, make it so it darkens, rotate it 90 degrees. Now it should line up. Now let's do it again. 90 degrees. So now what I end up with is a larger pattern that, cancel that. That you can, that's not great. Okay, rotating a angular thing on a, I will need to take care of that. That's why I have multiple patterns. So it's not quite as recognizable of angular patterns, but that's the concept of how it works. But what I want to do is now switch up what the actual, have multiple patterns. So I need to be well aware of that nose. It's down towards the middle, and because when you repeat that right angle on a central axis, you can get something that looks reminiscent of a symbol associated with a lot of hate. Okay, so I need to remember for the next one not to have anything that's reminiscent remotely of a swastika. Okay. Then I have a larger square that I can reflect and rotate and mess with. That has some repetition, but it breaks these lines up a little bit. So now let's go again. And I will start in that rotating corner to make sure there's no way that I'm going to create that exact look and form. Okay, so let's again mark off registration points, which will be these 4 corners. And we will go again. I will immediately change this form. Just make it a tall dude. And if I have 4 of these, I can create similar patterns that have some slight variation to them. So if I have 4, I can do 1, 2, 3, 4. I can do 1, 4, 2, 3. I can do 1, 3, 4, as far as the order of them go. Which means that I can create similar but different, but not as labor intensive to create unique patterns. There's also no clear orientation to any of these. Hello, Walter. keep working. Do another one of these guys. I'm gonna do 2 more. I pretty much only wear shirts that are work that I've done. This is like the most color I get. Day's going fine, just working. Does it a little bit? Sometimes camera freaks out when I'm switching settings. I didn't scan that one yet, so still okay. I missed an eye on one of the guys. Thank you, Rachi. Apologize if I'm saying your name wrong. Rocky. Or if that is your name, I don't know. I'll go further on this. Hello. And I submitted something with your name on it earlier, but I forget what your actual name is. So, is it Artie? Mine? I apologize, but hello. I don't know how to say I'm sorry in German. I didn't know. No, it's not. You don't have to pay $28 for the shirt. There are more taxes for shipping to Germany than I expected. So, for future items, I would charge that much for shipping to most European countries because there's a different taxation for shipping there. But because I told you it was $23 at first, that's the price that you paid, and that's what you'll get. And I'm not going to charge you for my mistake. I just didn't know. I haven't done much shipping internationally. And when I have, it's been I ship it directly, but having it produced. I was trying to make that clear in the message when I sent you that. Just letting you know that if you do want to get a shirt in the future, it'll be $28 instead of $23, but I'm not charging you. I end up making like $1 from that shirt, which is okay. That's my fault. It's a mixture of fees, where whatever payment method you use usually takes 30 cents plus 2.9%. So that ends up being about $1. And then the fees for shipping and processing. It's also a little bit more expensive to print and ship to Europe because it's cheaper ultimately to have it produced at a printing spot in Europe, but it's more expensive for the base product than it is for printing in the US by about $1. And then there's VAT. There's a something tax that comes that anytime that there have been local state taxes in the United States, those costs have been negligible. Not great, but just to make things even and more easy, just leave it. But it's a few dollars for I think most of Europe. It's slightly cheaper in the UK, but that's my mistake. You're not at fault for anything. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't charge you more when I had already agreed and submitted the invoice to you. That's weird. Just future things. Anything in the future, it'll probably be a little bit more. Sorry for that. I was trying to explain it easily in the message, but I guess it didn't. I didn't communicate it clearly, so I'm sorry. I'm still figuring out how to best approach shipping to non-US countries. Don't have any do that's exterior. I don't believe I have. Excuse me. I've made 3. I'm making 4 total so that I can arrange them. Sort of like this, and create a grid, make a square. And rearrange them in different orders. And maybe offset them in different spots. But 4 is the plan. And I can do like repeat elements or not. So it could be like 3 3 1 2 1 4 3. To fill out the space on. The plan is to test out some all-over printing, which is a different printing methodology that I am not as familiar with. And figure I can make a pattern, see how well it goes and what it looks like ultimately, but it is a lot like Tetris. There are some of these that are actual Tetris pieces. This one, that are made up by 4 squares. This one. This one would be too large. This one. Feels like Tetris. I was worried I wasn't recording for a second. Not the worst, but I want to try and stay recording. Okay, so I don't want to have that. What have I done thus far? I'm going to have Twisty Guy. Pardon me for a second. Which way gets me? There we go. It's weird seeing like a 15-second delay where I get to see myself working and then blow my nose and look off to the side and see myself blow my nose over here. It is 4:30 p.m. mid-late afternoon. That'd be 16:36 if you're going for 24-hour time. I don't know what's most common in the Philippines. Thanks. Hope you sleep well. Okay. So now digitize in time. That over yonder, I need to scan these guys. Then two. Let me see if I scan that correctly. Thank you. Back to showing some of the digital stuff in a second. Scanning things at the moment. Alright, so I'm going to close that guy out, pop this guy on, and get these going. Okay, it's freaking out. I don't know why. It's going slow. Come on. I don't need After Effects open. Okay. Now, so let's darken this pretty strong. Lighten it as well. So that I'm left just with lines, outlines, fill these guys in. Make a very big item. And then do the same here. Let's scale this up so you can see this a little bit better. So make this dark, make this light. Fill in the solids. I'm surprised that thus far I have not had any instances where I did not connect the line to make a fully enclosed section. Let's copy this over. I missed a big one here. Contrast. It's just, I like using curves because it's what I'm most comfortable with. Let's darken this a little bit. There's a chance that I end up dropping some frames here because I'm dealing with larger files. And my computer is making fan noises. I missed that guy. Did I? No, I got it in the long run. Okay. Let's label these in a second. This one will be Taco 1. I don't remember. I'm just going to name these 2, 2, 3, Taco 4. Okay, and let's get a line. Better. Here. Let's see how this looks. And one more here. Now we can work on aligning this. And this guy. And one more. Bit off on the block above it. I was wrong for the first bit. Okay. I work in Photoshop a lot. Hello, Solic. I don't know. Photoshop is something I'm comfortable in as far as stationary images. That's how it tends to go. Everything contained? Looks like everything's contained. That's your general pattern. That can now, let me clean this up. Ooh, that's not quite lined up. Those look good. This is a bit off. Okay, there. not perfect. But it's okay. As long as it's within the bounds, should be okay. Okay. Watch me nudge things. Let me put these down here, and then clean this up. Where are these rulers? Might end up adjusting this a bit more, but to get things settled for now. Just get rid of my registration marks. This is all hand done, so it's not like it's going to be perfect. It should be decent. Okay. Let me know that. Designs 3, 1. Okay. Oh, that's not huge. Okay. So that's more or less what it looks like compiled. There are a few options with it that I'm going to mess with the organization and placement of to ultimately, ideally, be put onto a print all over sort of setup. But if you have questions, comments, concerns, you can voice them now. Otherwise, I'll jump off soon. I might mess with this a little bit more to change what the organization of everything is. Thank you for the nice comment. But that's not fun to watch. Do a quick review of what I did. I created basic I was going to say tessellation, and I said basic, and I've got the S sound from tessellation. Basic tessellation by taking a square and doing a rotational pattern. So I took a 6x6 square, got this pattern, took it out, moved it over, rotated it, so then ultimately I could have a pattern that filled out a larger square but had some variation in between. And then I made 4 patterns that reference that initial pattern. Oh man, I gotta explain again because I got this image everywhere. Okay. So started off taking a square and making a sort of basic tessellation pattern, which in order to do that you can take a section from one portion, cut into it, take that, rotate it over, to create a new shape. And then you can rotate on a 90-degree pattern and have it fit back around. What I wanted to do was break up and not have this line going the whole way through. And then I created patterns based on those guys that filled in those spaces. So these fill in that form. And I made 4 of those. Got too many sheets of paper running around. And ended up with these items that can align with one another. And end up with something like this. And I can use this to create like variations if I reposition and change the order of these to where like now this one's over here. Or it could be placed here. So there's similarities but variations. It's modular. I love modular things. But it makes it so there's like 4 times 3, like 24 different ways that it can be rearranged. And then it can also be then as a square placed in different positions and rotated or even inverted or flipped to fill out a large space with a pattern that doesn't require completely new elements for different sections, but isn't so visually repetitious as if it were to be just like if this little section right here, if that was repeated, you would very quickly recognize the repeating elements, or even that, because you just see like that face again, even if it's rotated or adjusted. So if you have any questions, I'll answer them, but otherwise I will head out. I'll give you guys like a minute. That's more visually interesting up top. But not many folks watching right now, so I think I might just take this opportunity to head out and get something up and get dinner before too much time has passed. Okay. Thanks for watching. This will be up on YouTube. This shirt will be available pretty soon as a square design, but I am planning on implementing it in all over print format later on, but I need to find my bearings with that a little bit more clearly before I put it out into the world. I'll wave goodbye with this hand. Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna head out.